Naps here, and today we're going to be doing a list on the top 125 women in the UFC for all time. So there's actually a good interview with Shevchenko where she says currently the girls in the 125 division are making history because it's such a young division, obviously so much younger than the men's, that the greatest of all time is still being figured out, and that is obviously true to a large degree. You've only had two champions, and only one of them has even been able to defend the belt. It is the youngest division in the UFC. 145 is second youngest division in the UFC. And yeah, over the course of the next couple of years, obviously, there will be a big shift in who is in the top 10. And most of these girls will probably fall out of it, especially the girls that haven't won a title. But as of right now, this is how I see the top 10 all-time 125 for the women's UFC 125. So this is specific to the UFC. This isn't including previous Invicta stuff and stuff like that, although we will talk a little bit about that with some of these different girls. This is a UFC top 10, not an MMA top 10. So yeah, let's break it down. So obviously, you can see the list right here, 1 through 10. Going from the bottom up, number 10, I put in Lauren Murphy. So Lauren is 14-4 in MMA, 6-4 in the UFC, and 5-1 at 125. All of those fights in the UFC. So obviously she has quite the impressive 125 record. At 125, her only loss is to Ciara Eubanks, who was a top fighter on the Ultimate Fighter 125, new world champion, which was the original one, or the original tournament for the new 125 champion, which Nico Montano went on to win. So yeah, she's a very, very good record at this division, and she will probably go on to get a title shot. She's actually the only girl on this top 10 list as of right now that has not had a title shot. So I believe that Lauren Murphy will probably go on to get a title shot. And, she might be the next girl that they get Shevchenko to fight, especially if Shevchenko doesn't end up moving up to 125. And it doesn't look like or if Shevchenko doesn't move to 135, and it doesn't look like Montano is going to be coming back down. So, Lauren Murphy might be the next fight that we see. They might do one of the other girls, but I would expect it to probably be Lauren Murphy. She's on a 4-fight win streak. I guess it depends on how she does in her next fight. I don't know if she has a fight scheduled. She's scheduled to face Joanne Calderwood at UFC 263. So, yeah, if she wins that next fight with Calderwood, I would expect her to become the number one contender. And then, yeah, moving on to Roxanne Modafferi, a fighter that's been around for pretty much forever. Roxanne's been fighting since 2003, since the early days of MMA. So she really is a pioneer, not just in women's MMA, but really in MMA as a whole. But probably has the most impressive overall record of these girls just because she's been in the game so long. At one point, she was 15-5, and she was the Strikeforce Bantamweight champion. And then, obviously, she went on to go and fight in Invicta, won a bunch of smaller titles, fought for the Invicta Flyweight title, ended up being one of the finalists, and fought Nico Montano and lost for the women's Flyweight title in the UFC. And then since then, she's had a pretty impressive run. Pretty mixed run, I should say, sorry. She's been able to beat some of the lesser girls in the UFC, but not some of the higher ranked girls, which kind of makes sense because she is now 38 and she's past her prime. So unfortunately, both for herself and for us as fans, Roxanne Modafferi was a girl that didn't even have the option to fight into the UFC until she was already in her late 30s, and therefore she only gets the number 9 spot. But she does have some pretty impressive wins, especially earlier in her career when she was fighting a lot of these top girls. She fought Marlis Conan. She fought Majumi Bushita, beat her twice. She's actually 2-1 against her. She had a nice trilogy. But yeah, as of right now, I doubt that Modafferi will probably be one of these girls that falls off. A lot of these other girls on this list are younger, still in the prime of the career. Modafferi is kind of the one girl that's at the tail end of her career. And yeah, I'd expect her to fall off this list, along with most of these girls within the next couple of years. But as of right now, I view Modafferi as the number 9 women's flyweight of all time in the UFC. So number 8, Joanna Jędrzejczyk. So Joanna has a MMA record of 16-4. She was 10-4 in the UFC, 7-1 at 125, 1-1 at 125 in the UFC. So she actually fought at 125 pounds until she got signed to the UFC, where she dropped to 115. So her UFC debut was actually also her strawweight debut. So prior to the UFC, she did go 7-0 at 125, and then since the UFC, she's 1-1. She obviously beat Tisha Torres and then lost the title fight to Shevchenko in a fairly good showing. Obviously Shevchenko won that fight, but Joanna being the undersized girl, it was the fact that she was able to hold in there is enough. But the fact that she has so few fights in the UFC at 125 is why I have her so far down this list. Obviously, Joanna is one of the best female fighters of all time. In my opinion, the best 115-pounder of all time. But right now, I'd only put her at number 8 in the 125-pound division. This is a girl that I think definitely has the skill set and the opportunity that she could go on to possibly win the title at some point. Be that if she gets a rematch with Shevchenko or Shevchenko moves up, or who knows what happens. But Joanna is still a very game fighter and therefore could move up this list. But as of right now, just because of most of her career being at 120 or 115, especially in the UFC, I can only put her at number 8. Then we get to Jessica Eye. So Jessica Eye, obviously former title contender, 15-9-1 MMA record, 5-8-1 in the UFC, 14-3 at 125, and 4-3 at 125 in the UFC. So just for Maya has a more mixed record if you're just looking at the numbers, but those losses are to top girls, and a lot of those losses are also a weight class up. So she's lost to Miesha Tate, weight class above. She lost to Alexis Davis. She's lost to Betche Correa, Sarah McMahon, Julia Pena, Shevchenko, Calvillo, Calderwood. So almost every girl she's lost to is either a champion or a title contender. So she's one of those girls where she's always taking top fights, so her record is a little bit deceptive. She's not your typical 15-9 fighter, right? Like, this is a girl where she's basically been fighting top 5, top 10 girls for the last almost 10 years now, and therefore her record, reflects that. It's kind of Randy Couture-esque, where Randy retired with, I think, a record of like 19-11 or something like that. So, if you just look at that number, it's not quite as impressive, but when you see the caliber of opponents that she's facing, she does have one of the most impressive records in the UFC. Obviously, she hasn't been able to win a title, and recently she's been on a little bit of a possible downturn. She lost to Cynthia Calvillo and then Joanne Calderwood. But we could see her come back and end up getting a title shot. The 125 division is fairly thin, and Valentina is kind of wrecking through everyone, so it is possible that they'll need to bring her back, and maybe if she ends up picking up a couple of good wins, we could see her get a title shot, and yeah. But overall, Jessica is one of the girls that, at this point in her career, I expect her to start going down this list. I don't think she has much chance of it going back up. She is kind of on a little bit of a downturn. She's 34 years old, so she's not completely out of her prime, but she's definitely near the end of it. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But as of right now, I have Jessica Eye as the number 7, but I would probably see her moving down over the next couple of years. Number 6, we have Liz Carmouche. So Liz Carmouche, obviously a former 125er. She actually fought, former 135er. She actually fought for both the Strikeforce and the UFC women's 135 pounds belts, losing to Conan and Rousey. She has a record of 15-7 overall, 7-5 in the UFC, and 4-2 at 125. All of those fights being in the UFC. She, at 125, she's only lost to Alexis Davis and to Valentina Shevchenko, which are two top girls, so that's not too, that is obviously doesn't look too bad on her. Split decision to Davis, and unanimous decision to Shevchenko. She's also lost to Davis at 135 pounds, Miesha Tate, and then, of course, Sarah Kaufman and Marlies Conan, who were back in the early 2010s, probably two of the top girls in the division. So, yeah, Carmouche has, again, consistently been one of those top girls and has had title shots both at 35 and at 25. And I think that, being on a 2-fight win streak, although she's now in Bellator, if she is able to, get a couple more wins, maybe get that Bellator title, and then come back to the UFC, she might be able to get a title shot right away and maybe move her way back up the rankings even higher. But if she ends up losing in Bellator, which is the risk of Bellator, risk of going to Bellator is that if you go there and you win the title and then you come back, then you're a bigger star than before. But if you go there and you lose, then it can really kill off your career like a Benson Henderson. So, it would be interesting to see Carmouche come back, and she definitely has a chance to come back, looking at that 2-fight win streak. But that being said, I would expect Carmouche to fall off the rankings as time goes on, because I just don't see her coming back. I'd be very surprised. She's getting older, and obviously she was never able to capture a title when she was in her prime at 37. I'd be very surprised if she was able to catch one now. Caitlin Chookagian. So this girl is more middle-aged, I guess you could say, for a fighter, 32, right around the typical prime. So Chookagian is a girl that I could actually possibly see winning a title in her future. She just recently beat Cynthia Calvillo. Before that, she lost to Jessica Andrade. Before that, she beat Shevchenko's sister, Antonia Shevchenko. And before that, she lost to Shevchenko. So she is 2-2 in her last 4, but top opponents, obviously only losing to 2 former champions. She also has a split decision loss to Jessica Ai and a split decision loss to Liz Carmouche, which is all 4 of her losses. So all 4 of her losses are 2 girls who are also on this top 10 list. Very impressive resume. A girl that is still in the prime of her career, has a very good chance of winning the title at some point, has a very good chance of moving her way up the list and solidifying her position to not just be knocked off as more contenders come and attempt to win the belt. Because if you really want to solidify yourself on one of these top 10 lists, you definitely have to get a belt, because eventually, once there's 10 champions, or at least 10 champions, it's going to be hard to justify that you're one of the top 10 if you're not one of the 10 people that has held the belt. So, as of right now, Chookagian, I would put her at number 5. But I do think that she has the chance to move her way up the rankings and possibly solidify herself as one of those girls if she can capture the belt. That being said, at 32, that window is closing. The older she gets, the less chance there is of that happening. Number 4. So here we have Jennifer Maia, 18-7-1 MMA record, 3-3 in the UFC. 17-7-1 at 125 pounds. She's actually only fought once outside of that weight, which was at 135 pounds in Immortal FC. But yes, so for former Invicta Flyweight champion, defended it twice before getting bought out by the UFC. She then lost to Liz Carmouche. She then won against Alexis Davis and Roxanne Modafferi before losing to Chookagian, winning against Calderwood, and then losing to Shevchenko. She's beat Modafferi, girl on this list, twice. She's lost to Carmouche and Chookagian and Shevchenko, who are also on this list. She's beat Jessica Andrade, who's also on this list. So Chookagian does have a mixed record. That being said, Chookagian is, again, only 32, just coming off her loss to Shevchenko last November. She is expected to fight Jessica Ai, another girl on this list, at 264. And the girl that wins that fight has a good chance to go on to be a contender and possibly move themselves back up the ranks. But as of right now, I would put Jennifer Maia at number 4. Impressively, though, she's probably the only girl to win a round against Shevchenko at 125 pounds. Shevchenko's looked utterly flawless other than her fights against Nunes, which are, of course, up a weight class. And, Maia was the one girl to make her, look like somewhat human for at least a round. Number 3, Jessica Andrade. So another girl that moved up weight class. Andrade, obviously the former 115-pound world champion, the most recent title contender. Unfortunately, she did lose the title fight, 3-4 or 3-1 in her last 4. Although that is deceptive because that is against Zhang Weili, Rose Namajunas, and Shevchenko. Obviously, the current champion at 115, 125, and until this weekend, the other 115 champion. So, again, with a 21-9 9 MMA record, a 12-6 UFC record, a 1-1 record at 125, she is probably not the best example of a girl that should be fighting or should be ranked among these 125-pounders, but I do expect her to stay there, unlike Joanna, who seems to be wanting to move back down to strawweight to fight Weili. Andrade seems to want to stay at 125 pounds, at least from what I've seen, and if that were to happen, then Andrade could make a good run for it. The big thing she'll have to work on is her striking. Obviously, we saw that with both the Rose fights, where she got lit up until eventually she smashed Rose on her head the one time. The other fight she lost, and then again the Shevchenko fight, where she actually got outmuscled, and that is a big reason why she's going to have to work on her striking at 125. She might end up just moving back down, I don't know. But again, she has beat Shakugian. She's beat pretty much every top girl at 115 pounds. She actually fought at 135 pounds before. Yeah, she's been all over the place. So she's a very, very impressive record. And again, I would put her right now at least as the number 3 women's 125-pounder of all time. Now, the number 2, and possibly, although I don't know if this will be my most controversial, some of these will be fairly controversial, just because everyone has their favorite fighter. But a lot of people really underrate Nico Montana, in my opinion. Nico is 4-3 overall in MMA. She is 1-1 in the UFC, but she is 1-0 in the UFC at 125 pounds, and 3-0 at 125 pounds, regardless of the organization. 6-0 at 125 pounds if you count her Ultimate Fighter, a new world champion fights, the exhibition fights. So obviously Montana has had issues making weight before. She missed weight for, I think it was the fight. It was supposed to be the fight with Shevchenko, wasn't it? She missed weight. Yeah, it was the Shevchenko fight. So obviously she missed weight for the Shevchenko fight, and then because of that, it never ended up happening. And then Shevchenko went on to fight Ioana Jędrzejczyk for the title. But that being said, if Nico can get her weight on track and can get back down to 125 pounds, in my opinion, she's the fight I want to see most, like, for Shevchenko, because 6-0, she's beat most of the top girls at 125 pounds. She's beat Roxanne, she's beat Barb Hollowchank, Montana De La Rosa, she's beat Lauren Murphy. So I think a lot of people underrate her because they just see the numbers. It was 1.4-2, now 4-3 because she moved back up to bantamweight. But all 3 of those losses are at 135 pounds, which is heavier than her normal weight. And if we were to take out if we were just to look at her 125 pound body of work, it's 3-0, 1-0 in the UFC, and then the 3-0 in exhibition as well with the Ultimate Fighter. So, yeah, very, very, very impressive. I don't know if we'll ever see her back down again. She doesn't seem to really want to fight Shevchenko, and I think that's another reason a lot of people don't like her, is because she kind of seemed to have been avoiding Shevchenko. I remember the lead up to what was supposed to be the fight, she was saying that Shevchenko didn't deserve it because she was moving down, and that one of the girls from the Ultimate Fighter should have gotten it. And I think, that obviously looks bad on her, but to some degree that it is, she does have she did have some kind of a point at the time. Shevchenko obviously, I think, had one fight at 125 pounds at that point, and there was girls that had fought multiple times already, had multiple wins, and even though everyone kind of knew Shevchenko was the best girl, she really hadn't earned it. But she's gone on to prove that she did deserve it. So, but that being said, I would really love to see the Nico Montano-Shevchenko fight. And, I'd like to see how Nico stacks up against her to see where Nico ranks in the all-time list. But as of right now, is the only other girl to win that belt, and being 6-0 at 125 pounds, I think she's highly underrated, and I think she is the second best women's flyweight of all time. And then obviously number one, there's no question about it at this point, with 5 title defenses, the most in women's flyweight history, second most in women's MMA history. It's just 100% got to be Shevchenko. Shevchenko's got a record of 21-3, 8-0 at 125 pounds, 9-2 in the UFC, and 7-0 at 125 pounds in the UFC. She's only fought one time at flyweight outside of the UFC. She's lost to Liz Carmouche, who she ended up avenging as a title defense, the original fight being in C3 Fights, Red River Rivalry in Oklahoma. She has lost to Nunes, the probably pound-for-pound best female to ever live, twice by unanimous decision and split decision. And again, both those fights at 130, all 3 of those fights actually at 135 pounds. So, and one of them avenged. She has been trying to pull off getting the Nunes fight, which would be very interesting if she can get the third Nunes fight. Obviously, the last time they fought, she wasn't the champion, so there wasn't near as much hype behind it. But now that Shevchenko is the champion, and these girls are basically seen as the 2 best women to ever do it, arguably, I think that could be a great fight if we were able to see the third fight. I don't know how well it would sell because, people would be like, oh, she should have beat her twice. But both of those were close decisions. One was a unanimous decision that a lot of people thought should have gone the other way, and the other one was a split decision. So Amanda's closest fights have been with Shevchenko, and which says a lot because Shevchenko is obviously a 125-pounder and a 135-pounder. More impressive wins that Shevchenko has. She has a win over Holly Holm, decision unanimous, who is obviously a former 135-pound champion and a 145-pound contender. She has a win over Joanna Jędrzejczyk, a former 115-pound champion and 125-pound contender. And then, Jessica Ai, Carmouche, Chikugian, Maya, Andrade, which is another very impressive 115-pound champion, 125-pound contender. So, Shevchenko is very quickly gaining one of the most impressive records in MMA, let alone women's MMA, let alone fucking women's 125. She's already so far beyond the other girls in 125 that she's in a league of her own. It's her, then Montano, then all the other girls, as far as I'm concerned, for legacy. Shevchenko's a clear number 1, Montano's a clear number 2, and then everyone else is kind of, you can throw them wherever. But yeah, this is how I have it. Shevchenko at number 1 because the title defense is just everything. Like, everything she's done at 125 pounds. It's the most impressive that anyone's ever done. Montano at 2, I think she's highly underrated. I think that's 6-0 at 125. Winning the Ultimate Fighter, being the first champion, I think she's earned that. Andrade, again, another girl. Very few fights at 125 pounds, but she has fought the top competition and beat most of them except Shevchenko at 125 pounds, which is very impressive. Jennifer Maia, the girl that has given Shevchenko the best run for her money at 125 pounds, so far her closest fight. Although she doesn't have quite as good of a record as some of these other girls, she was the closest match for Shevchenko not that long ago, so she is currently at a very high level. Chikugian, another girl that's right in her prime, beating up a lot of these top girls, could be a top contender for a top contender again very soon. Carmouche, the girl that's kind of fading away, doesn't really have a chance of climbing back up this ladder, probably gonna get knocked off this ladder, but right now I have her number 6. Another girl that probably is gonna get knocked off this ladder, getting a little older, but right now I have her number 7. Jędrzejczyk, most impressive 115-pounder ever, but moving up to 125 pounds, I have her as a little less impressive. Obviously, very good record. Only girl she's been having problems with, again, Shevchenko, although she hasn't picked up as many wins as some of these other girls, so I only have her at number 8. Modafferi, this girl, pioneer of the sport, pioneer of women's MMA, probably has one of the most illustrious overall records in women's MMA history, and even though the UFC unfortunately came into term far past her prime. She has held up to some degree at the UFC, and I would give her the number 9 spot for that. Obviously doing very well on The Ultimate Fighter, and then going on to be in the original title fight for the first women's bantamweight title, even though she lost it, or women's flyweight title, even though she lost it. I think that earns her a lot of respect. And then Lauren Murphy, probably the best contender right now that is not already on this list. I think Lauren Murphy is one of those girls that has a chance of possibly winning the title at some point if she's able to beat Shevchenko. That I don't know. Maybe Shevchenko moves up and vacates, and then Lauren Murphy can slide in there and hold the title for a bit. But Lauren Murphy is one of those up-and-coming girls that I think has a really good chance of winning the title. So this is how I see it right now. Like, comment, subscribe, and tomorrow we will do a pound-for-pound list with the women.